The Celtics are turning into a defensive juggernaut right now. We're going to talk about it. I'm your boy Adam Taylor. If you're new here, I've been covering the Celtics for close to 10 years. You can find me over at USA Today. You can find some of my work on NESN. Most importantly, you can find it on the Celtics Chronicle newsletter and links in the description. As usual, I'm joined by my homie, compadre, co-host in crime, Mr. Billy Calabrese. What's popping, Billy?
What's going on, everybody?
Another win for the Celtics, man. Another win. This team is just figuring shit out regardless of who's on the floor, and I'm all the way here for it. This game, there was no Jaylen Brown, no Nemi, obviously no Jason Tatum. Coming up against Giannis on his first game back after a stretch being injured. Now, look, Milwaukee's not a great team, right? I don't think anyone who isn't a Milwaukee Bucks fan right now is going to argue with us when we say Milwaukee is not a good team. Do you disagree?
Can't say a word against it.
Anyone that was listening on audio, Billy was shaking his head and then obviously gave us the take. They're not good. They're just not. The Celtics held them to 81 points. Just shut them down completely for the most part. Obviously, Giannis got what Giannis wanted to get. He got downhill, drew his fouls and everything like that, but it didn't really make a difference. And me and Billy were speaking before we came on there. And we were talking about the defense and just how improved that's been lately and just how impressive it's been. So we went back and we looked at the numbers. So let me make sure I'm getting this right again. Yep. So in 3 of their last 5 games, they've held teams to under 100 points. And in 5 of their last 10 games, they've held teams to under 100 points. Now, this is impressive because some of those 10 games were on the road in the West. And the Celtics went in there and just put up shutouts. One of them was against the Lakers. One of them was against the Suns. They also had one against Miami, but that was back at the TD Garden. They had one against Philly the other night. Then obviously they had this one against Milwaukee. 5 games, they've held teams to under 100 points. Now, this is a team that isn't necessarily awash with guys that you would quantify as top-tier defenders. Obviously, I think you'd put Jaylen Brown in that category as a top-tier on-ball defender. I think that's, in my opinion, you could argue that, but you'd be wrong. It's a little bit arrogant, but true. But for the most part, this is a team that the sum, what is it? The whole is greater than the sum or whatever it is.
The sum of the parts, something like that. There's some quote about it.
But whatever that quote is, that's this team. Right. So, Billy, I just wanted your take on this just because of the level of defense we're seeing from this team, the buy-in that we're seeing. Obviously, we're all very accustomed to saying that the team's overachieving at this point. We're all very accustomed to knowing that there's been developmental growth across the board. But this defense just seems to continue finding ways to improve as we're getting closer and closer to the postseason.
I mean, honestly, we're built in the model of Joe Mazzulla. This is Joe Mazzulla's defense, and we play like that. And defense travels. It doesn't matter who's out there, which players are resting that night, which players are out. Oh, the bench guys are in. It's the same system. It's the same level of intensity. And you have to bring it all back to Joe because let's be honest, nobody on this team is going to make an all-defensive team. I'd vote for Derrick White, but I just don't see him getting enough votes to make even the second team all-defense. And another argument is there should be 3 all-defensive teams, not just 2, but we can solve that another day.
Would you put D. White as an elite defender? I think I would. I think I've got White as like an elite defensive guard.
I mean,
shot blocking aside.
Not just the shot blocking, just the pressure that he puts on the ball handlers, I think is one of the best in the league. I would actually have him in the DPOY race. I know it's going to go to a big guy. It almost always does. But I think he should at least get some honorable mention there, even if he doesn't finish in the top 2 or 3, which we know he won't. But in my vote, he would be in that kind of category.
The way he can navigate screens, the way he kind of pressures guys when he's in the rear view, chasing down the back of them, his ability to switch onto pretty much any position and hold his own. You see the Celtics use him a lot in cross matching. But there's just so much that he does that's beneficial to the team on the defensive end that when you look at him and Brown together, like if you're trying to switch off one onto the other, it's a nightmare. Now, look, the Celtics don't have the same level of defensive depth as they did last season or the year before. The amount of times we spoke about, oh, you get a switch off of Derrick White, but congratulations, you managed to get yourself switched on to Drew Holiday. Or congratulations, you got switched on to Jason Tatum and that length for Al Horford. the depth in terms of elite defense has gone downhill just because of the nature of the retooling process. But everybody's stepping up, right? And there's a lot of length in the wing department now. You've got Jordan Walsh, who's just got ridiculous wingspan. Hugo's got good size, good length, moves his feet well. Obviously, you got Jaylen. You got, if you go into the front court, deeper into the front court, now you've got Vooch, you got Nimi, you got Luka. There's a lot of length there. So they're managing to find ways to defend at a high level. They're pinching a lot. They really tried to deny ball drives, like ball penetration. They try a lot to limit guys getting anywhere near the nail. They pinch a lot. They rotate. What I like is the scrambles that they put out there are like full force sprints, and they're rotating quite regularly on the weak side out of the weak side eye. So the high man on that weak side eye will sprint out to contest or close out. So it looks like guys are covering a lot of ground to contest threes when they've overcommitted, but it's not always the case. But overall, this defense has really improved over the last few months. And now we're at a point where sub 100 games are becoming quite consistent. And if you remember back to Ime Udoka's lone season, ill-fated season, well, it wasn't really ill-fated. They went to the NBA Finals, but you know what I mean. One of the calling cards of when that team turned it around, because everyone seems to forget that the Celtics really struggled for most of that season under Ime, and it wasn't until after the All-Star break that they started to really figure things out, was they started to do these shutouts. And by shutouts, I'm just talking sub 100-point games from the opponent. They started to piece them together bit by bit and grind out wins on the offensive end. Now, the Celtics are doing more than grinding out wins. They're on a bit of a streak at the moment from deep. But it feels very much like that right now, where it's like, they've found a way to take their defense up to a new level, and they're shutting teams out game after game at this point. I mean, I said that 5 out of their last 10, they've held teams to under 100. But then in some of those games, it's been marginally over 100. So, like, if you look at the Chicago game, they allowed 105. If you look at the Denver game, okay, Celtics barely scored. The ball just wasn't dropping. They only scored 84, but they only allowed 103. And it's like, even the games where they've allowed more than 100, some of them are so low into the hundreds that they're not cracking the 110, the 115 mark. The defense is really staying locked in, whether the ball's falling on offense or not. And that's always been an issue for this Celtics team over recent years, is like, their defense is great when their offense is great, but when their offense struggles, so does the defense. It does feel kind of like that MA season with just how this team's locking in.
Yeah, and it's really impressive because they're doing it in such a different way. This isn't the switch everything defense that we were used to in 2022, even that we kind of modified in 24. What this is, it's a lot of ball pressure. We're picking up the ball early. Like, you'll see a lot of times they're pressing well before the other side is, even at the half court line, they're already picking up their guys and trying to force them one way or another. And another thing about it is, I mean, what's really crazy about it is, like, they're even playing a lot of drop. Like, Vooch is a drop. When Vooch is in, his philosophy is to drop. Every player has a different philosophy on this defense, but they're all playing it perfectly.
I will say they've played drop under Mazzulla for a while. Like, KP was a drop big for the majority last season, but it's the way they're getting into drop, which I agree with here. Like, Vooch, so with Nimi, they play a lot of up to touch, right? And that just means being able to physically put your hand out and touch your defender who you're defending while they're setting a screen. You're up to the touching level of the screener, not at the level of the screen, but being able to touch, you're within touching level. And then Nimi will either hedge and recover and drop, or he'll just straight drop back. Luka Garza tends to hedge and recover because he's got that big body, and he seems to be quite good at kind of moving on a dime, changing direction and running back into a drop. So there is these marginally different defensive roles to the bigs. And then, as you said, there's not as much switch. Sometimes they'll switch 1 through 4 with 5 in drop. Sometimes they'll hedge and recover with the 5-man and switch 2 through 4 with the point guard staying on his man. Sometimes it'll be straight up man to man. You see some possessions where there are no switches and guys are just battling over screens to keep the pressure up. It's very fluid. It feels like it can change possession to possession, which is what you want, because it keeps teams guessing. It keeps teams from being able to settle in. We see some zone looks. We see a bunch of full court press, a bunch of half court press. But as you said, they're executing in ways that they haven't in previous years under Mazzulla, and even going back to like the Ime year. And they're executing in a way where everything is so fluid. Like sometimes it's like you're watching pack line defense, and in the next minute it feels like you're watching like a 2-1-2. Then it feels like it's just a straight man. Then a switch 1-3-4-5 and drop, switch everything. There's so many kind of like iterations, and there's no play calls going on. These guys are just flowing into different looks depending on. It's kind of like read and react defense, which is ideal. And the amount of communication it must take for that to execute at such a high level so consistently is probably one of the more underrated aspects of the way this team's operating, because they're so on a string defensively, and their switches are on time. If they're not going to switch, nobody's making a mistake on contact. They understand their assignment. So the vocalization on the court is probably one of the more under-discussed areas of this team right now.
Yeah, it just bugs me so much because everybody says this team either has no identity or their identity is they just chuck threes and live with the results, when their identity is freaking defense. And that's what really should win Mazzulla Coach of the Year, because it's plug and play. He could plug anybody into this system and have them have a role where they can excel, even if they're not normally known as a defensive player. Like, how many guys have we seen come up through this system that are not known as defenders, and now that's like, man, he's a pretty good defense. I mean, Sam Hauser is the greatest example. He's like one of the top 5 ISO defenders in the league by percentage, and you would not think that when you watch him play.
Baylor Scheinman being the latest example as well, came into the league as a 3-point shooter that can create off the dribble a little bit, who can rebound, and now he's having consistent minutes against like top tier talent. Like he's ranked quite highly on the Celtics for like star defense, because people are hunting him and he's holding his own. It's the same kind of growth trajectory that we saw from Hauser, where it's like people are forcing switches onto him and he's like, cool, let's go. And it's been fine. It's like, obviously it's not always pretty, but he's making an impact defensively. Hauser's obviously the best example. And you can even go down to someone like Nimi, who was never a bad defender, but he'd foul a lot. And now I'd rank him as like an above average defensive big. Like he's doing a lot defensively, and he's not the foul machine that he was this time last year, or the foul machine that I was personally worried about coming into the season. Like the growth there has been clear. So the developmental team overall has just been ridiculous. And I know Joe gave Brad a shout out in his post-game presser after last night's game against Milwaukee, where he was like, yo, credit to Brad. Brad just keeps finding guys with like high competitive character. He finds guys that wants to compete, that when they come into this locker room, they fit that kind of mentality. And you can see it from front to back, right? Like everyone on that team like gets after it on both sides of the floor. There's no kind of like shying away from contact. It's, we'll leave our friendship on the sideline. If I need to jump over you to get a rebound and I end up kneeing you in the head, I don't really give a shit. I want that ball. So I really like that. And I think that high competitive character that, as Mazzulla's categorizing it, is one of the key reasons why the defense has been so good, because these guys are taking complete pride in trying to get shutouts. And it's starting to pay off. For me, that is an identity of a team that's going to make noise in the postseason. And we spoke about this before, and I've spoke about it on God knows how many podcast episodes over the years. You can have bad shooting nights. Defense is effort and communication. Like you said, defense travels. Defense goes everywhere with you as long as you're willing to put in the hard miles. And when you're capable of shutting teams out of a 100-point game, holding them to 98, holding them to scoring in the mid-80s, even if they do crack 100, you're holding them under 105 or 110. And then you have the 3-point ability of this team and the ability to put up numbers like this team. Yeah, now all of a sudden you've got a recipe for like a Cinderella postseason run. And that's before we even say that Jason Tatum may or may not be back.
Yeah, that's really what this team is going to be able to really have. Man, that Cinderella shoe starting to look like it's going to fit, man. There's something really special about this team. And I know it's because of how low the expectations were at the beginning and them exceeding them, but they play with a pride, man. They play harder. That's something like Brad's teams and even Ime's teams at times didn't have, like where it's like, oh, are the Celtics going to show up tonight? Because there was something different when they had that, like, I don't want to say arrogance, but they just kind of had like a pride where they walked in the gym and they knew they were the best team in the league. Now they don't have that. They got that chip on their shoulder, and it's so fun seeing that scrappiness. It really reminds me of 2018 when, we were about 5-6 minutes away from the finals in that game 7.
I think Joe's getting a lot of credit right now, and it's well deserved, right? Like, if you read the media, everyone's like, Joe Mazzulla's doing a fantastic job. I still do not think he's getting enough credit. I genuinely don't. At this point, I'm like, and we spoke about this before, right? When I explained like the 3 buckets of coaching that I kind of look at, and you have your player coaches, you have your win now coaches, then you have your coaches that can do both, and there's very few of them. It's like Spo, and it was Pop, and just a couple. Mazzulla is fast being put in that same bucket as Spo. I've got him now as a coach that I'm like, 10 years time, I don't think a locker room tunes him out. I think that he's got the type of coaching ability and the ability to connect with guys, and he's so out of the box and such a peculiar cat that you can look at him and be like, dude, this guy could coach for 15 years and no one's tuning him out, because every season I bet it's completely different with this dude. Like, just playing bomb noises while you're running drills, like gunfire, and then making you watch National Geographic so you can look at how whales hunt seals. And then, what's it going to be next? It might be go-karting. We're going to take everyone go-karting because you need to understand how lane positioning can cut off an opponent. Like, he's so out there with the way that he finds correlation between different aspects of life into being a competitive athlete. Like, dude, I've got this guy's coach of the year. I've got him as a guy I'd like to see coaching the Celtics for the next 10, 15 years. I think that his coaching has been incredibly underrated this year, and that's even when factoring in the amount of praise that he's had. I still think it's underrated.
Yeah, the thing is his ability to adjust, which for some reason the fan base still doesn't think that he can do. For him to be able to turn this roster into a contender, I mean, that's adjusting. He's changed what they had to do. Like, obviously, when you lose a Drew Holiday, when you lose a Porzingis, when you lose, a Jason Tatum, and it's everybody 1 through 15 to buy in. That's so unusual in the NBA these days, man. I mean, we see it. We saw Paulo Banchero just last night throw his coach under the bus, say, yeah, other teams make adjustments at halftime. Like, you would never see a Joe Mazzulla player do that to him in a press conference.
I think part of that is because Joe would knock them the hell out. I think that's part of it, right? If he's not knocking you out, he's choking you out. It's one of the two. But at the same time, I also think that when you look at the teams that Mazzulla's had since he kind of came in, like, he had to adjust when KP and Drew got added, right? He had to adjust when all of a sudden the Celtics went from a finals contender to pretty much the best team in the NBA. That took an adjustment coaching-wise. And I think the biggest knock on Mazzulla during his first year and into that second year was he was a great game-to-game coach in terms of making adjustments game-to-game. His in-game adjustments were where a lot of the frustrations came from, at least from what I understood through looking at the discourse online and my own frustrations as well. I felt like he took too long to call timeouts, took too long to implement a new scheme. If you were getting cooked on switches, it took him a while before he'd go man or go zone. That isn't the case anymore. And we saw that earlier this season. He was pulling dudes for missing one rebound. Like, right, you miss a rebound, get out. I want to adjust. And I think that he's been adjusting his entire time. Now, some of it has been big scale adjustments, going from having KP and Drew to not having KP and Drew, along with Al and Luke. Going from not having them to having them. Those are big picture adjustments that he's handled really well. And then obviously the change in style of play this year, the change in defense this year, big picture adjustment. In-game adjustments, I also think he's drastically improved to the point where I do not see that as a weakness for him now. And I just think that it's sometimes people get this kind of notion of you as a coach, or you as, like, it doesn't matter what we're talking about here. It could be in your own workplace. It could be family members. People get an idea of you, and it's like they don't want to allow you or allow the idea that growth occurs every day, and people change, people adapt, what you're good at today, you might not be good at tomorrow. And it's very prevalent in sports overall. It's like, well, he can't make adjustments because he couldn't do it in his first 2 years. So now that's a weakness for the rest of his career, no matter how much he improves. And sometimes it just becomes a dead narrative. And I do think that Joe not being able to make adjustments has become a dead narrative. And I kind of just, like, if I see that now, I just roll my eyes and move on. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, you're more than welcome to have that opinion, but it's outdated at this point. It's kind of like wearing those. Do you remember those old Nike jackets from the 90s? Kind of like the PVC ones. You know the ones I mean, like the blue ones with the red and white stripes. I don't know. In my head, I'm thinking of like these old 90s Nike jackets where I'm like, yo, you can wear that now. And if you're doing it ironically, like I'm with you on that. But if you're doing that for a fashion statement, it's outdated. And that's the same way I feel about this Joe can't adjust. It's just an outdated statement at this point.
Yeah, anybody that's criticizing him now is just on some BS that they're just never gonna. There's nothing he can do because he already has the ring. He's shown that he can do it with a stacked super team, quote unquote, and he's shown that he's all about player development. Like the Stay Ready group, it started with that, but now look at it. Now look at the Baylors, look at the Ugos. Like he's not one of these coaches that just relies on vets to a detriment to the young guys on the roster. Everybody gets a shot, like 1 through 15. If you can play, he's going to play you.
What does Scal call them? The +1 boys.
Oh, yeah, that is what it is now, right?
I like that. The +1 boys. I like it. I think that's a good one. I don't usually like what Scal has to say, but I really messed with that one. I thought that was dope. To be honest, I do like Scal a lot. I just like to bust chops with people. I've never met the guy. What I will say is, just in terms of this whole narrative of the Celtics overachieving, at what point do we stop saying that they're overachieving and do we start saying that we underexpected? Does that make sense? Like, because this team is like coming in, everyone was like, well, they still got Drew. Because there were some people, and I was like, yo, you guys are just like diehard. Like, I'm a diehard Celtics fan, but I like to try and, like, to the point I was up at 5 a.m. watching the game. I woke up at 5 a.m., 2 hours before I had to get out of bed, so I could make sure I watched the game early so I can get a second watching later. Like, I'm waking up at 5 a.m. on every game day to do that. Like, I buy the jerseys, I buy the hats, we talk about it all the time. But I like to believe that I'm quite realistic, and sometimes probably to my own detriment because it's meant to be fun. But there were some Celtics fans out there that were like, nah, they've got Drew, they've got D. White, they've got Pritchard, they've got JT will be back. This team's fine. I don't know why everyone's saying the world's burning. I was like, yo, you just living in a happy land right now. Do you know what I mean? And you're taking too many happy pills. Maybe I was drinking too much haterade. We don't know. But we're looking back on it. I'm like, yeah, you were right, man. And maybe we were the ones that were wrong. And I'm open enough to admit that. But we've kind of spoke globally about this team for 20 minutes now. I feel like we can move on. I want to move on to talking about when Tatum does come back, if Tatum comes back. And we've touched on this before, but I definitely think it's worth talking about again now, as if he is going to come back, it's either later this week or next week. That's kind of been the floated time frame. So I want to look at who's in and who's out, right? I want to do which one of the young guys or who of the young guys are going to be gone from the rotation. Not completely gone. I'm not saying they're getting traded. I'm not saying they're going to get buried on the bench, but we're not going to see them as much as what we've seen them up until this point. And the one guy I keep coming back to, especially now we're seeing this kind of leap from Ugo, and now that Baylor Scheinman's in that starting five, he may or may not stay there, who knows, is Jordan Walsh. I feel like Jordan Walsh at the moment is the odd man out. I feel like once Jason Tatum's back, Walsh will be the first guy to be deep into that bench. He won't be the only guy, but I think it's going to be him. And then I think Baylor's minutes will start to drop as well. I actually think Ugo might be the safest one out of those young dudes right now.
Honestly, I might disagree. I mean, obviously, I agree about Walsh. Walsh is the odd man out. I mean, Harper Jr. is kind of eating his nachos right now a lot of the time, too. So if Harper Jr. can get some of his minutes, you know damn well Jason Tatum can. I'm of the, I don't know. I think I'm in the minority here, but I want to keep Baylor in the starting lineup, and I want to put Sam to the bench when Tatum comes back. And I think that's the most logical, right? Why doesn't anybody else see that, though? Nobody else is saying that. Everybody is like acting like it's automatic that they're going to start Tatum with Sam. And I was like, no, I want Sam on the bench for when Tatum's running those bench units. I also think that Baylor gives you that secondary ball handling that you'd miss. Like, you've got D. White. So I think that, you know, Tatum's going to run a lot of the ball handling responsibilities. After a few games back, it won't be that way. But I think once he's in rhythm, I think the ball handling responsibility goes to Tatum. White becomes your spot-up guy again, the way he was, where he gives you some secondary ball handling. But if you need someone to run a pick and roll and create, and you want to hit D. White with an open shot, or you want to hit JB, or
I think Baylor Scheinman brings that, plus the rebounding that he gives you at the guard position, at the 2 guard, plus his ability to shoot the free, his ability to drive. Like he's a free level scorer that can defend and rebound. That has more value in the starting 5 than it does on the bench, because you've already got Pritchard coming off the bench and Vooch coming off the bench. You've got 2 starting level guys coming off the bench already. It makes sense to keep Scheinman where he is, at least for the rest of this season. Plus, as we said earlier, he's defending really tough matchups and doing well. Like, I don't see why you wouldn't want Sam coming off the bench, because then you've got Pritchard, Sam, and Vooch as kind of that like playoff rotation bench unit. All 3 of them can stroke the free. All 3 of them can create for themselves off the dribble. You wouldn't be able to say that about Sam a few years ago, but we've seen him attacking closeouts like nobody's business the last few weeks. And that end of the first quarter against Milwaukee, takes the free, misses the free, gets the offensive rebound, puts it back up from 2. Like, you wouldn't have seen that from him a few years ago. He's developed his game and he's still trying to round it out. I'm on board with you. Derrick White, Baylor Scheinman, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Neemias Queta. Now, does Neemias stay the starting 5 when Tatum's back, or do you want the floor spacing that Vooch gives you? That's a conversation we can have. Not today, but it's one that we can have. I do think either way, though, I'm right there with you. And sorry, I cut your thought off, but yeah, I agree with you. I do apologize.
No, we're in the minority here because everybody thinks it's automatic, but I just think Baylor, what a lot of people don't understand is when you play with better players, it does kind of hide your flaws, and it also like basically, magnifies what you do well. So like on a bench unit, even though he's playing against worse players, not having like the gravity of some of these starters out there, it makes it a lot harder for somebody like a Baylor, especially somebody who's just getting their feet wet in the NBA. But playing with the starters, he has a little more freedom. There's a little less pressure on him because they're worried about Jaylen Brown. They're going to be worried about Jason Tatum. They're going to be worried about Derrick White. And somebody like Baylor, and I'm hoping this thumb injury doesn't slow him down because he's having such a perfect season. And those kind of thumb fractures can hurt when somebody swipes your hand too hard and messes up your hand for a month or 2, when you're playing hoops.
So I thought you were still going to continue that thought. Now, I do agree. And I think that, that thumb injury is probably going to linger now until the end of the postseason. I don't think it's going to be 100% now. And we've seen what that can do. We saw it with Tatum with the wrist injury a few years back, where his shot was just completely off because he was playing without hair. What was it, a hairline fracture or a displaced fracture or whatever it was? It was something weird. But like, it can impact, especially for Baylor, who's a lefty. So that thumb issue is on his shooting hand. So maybe he drives more and tries to finish offhand. Who knows, right? But he's still going to give you playmaking. He's still going to give you rebounding. And look, I'm not saying that Sam Hauser shouldn't be that guy that gets the starting lineup spot, but I just think I'd much rather Jaylen be at the 3 than the 2, because that's where he's thriving this season so far. It just makes more sense to keep him in a position where he's already having an all-NBA level season. If you start changing the position and asking him to do the same role, I don't know. I'm all in on keeping Baylor where he's at, is where I'm coming from.
And you've noticed since they made that switch that even though for the last couple months, Jaylen's turnovers have been going up as the months go on, like January it's been up, then February was more. It's starting to go back down again towards the end of February because Baylor's been in that lineup and they found some consistency. I don't want Jaylen dribbling. I'm sorry. He's having a great season. He's borderline all-NBA first team. I just don't want him dribbling.
So I wrote about this a few months back. It was a while back. If you go onto the link below, Celtics Chronicle, make sure you sign up. Make sure you're also signing up and subscribing to this YouTube channel right here. We're trying to do our thing. If you're with us, we love you. What I wrote about the other day or the other month was how the Celtics didn't ask Jaylen to be a Jason Tatum. They asked Jaylen to be a Jaylen, if that makes sense. They were like, yo, you do you, and we're going to accommodate around you. And they did that by accentuating him as a scorer rather than asking him to be a playmaker. And the numbers back this up. I'm just pulling them up because obviously numbers are subject to change. When numbers are subject to change, you need to keep checking them to make sure what I'm talking about hasn't developed into bullshit. So I'm just pulling up for touches. Now, everyone, when you're talking playmaking, for some reason, everyone looks at usage rate. Now, usage rate is how you measure offensive output. It's when you finish a possession with a shot, a layup, whatever. It's mainly offensive output. If you're looking to measure playmaking load, actual like creation load, whether that's self-creation or creation for others, You look at touches because that's how you're going to find out who's got the ball in their hand the most in terms to generate for other people. So when I'm looking, that's always been how I kind of, if I'm trying to statistically dive into someone's playmaking, the first thing I go to is touches. So when I'm doing that, and I'm just onto the Celtics now, and I've gone to touches, and I've gone to the season, okay, yeah, and I've filtered by most touches for the Celtics. As you can see, I'm still doing this as we talk. Sorry, this is elite podcasting. If you're listening, I'm sure, and not watching, I'm sure you're getting annoyed. Okay, Derrick White is second on the team, first on the team in touches, 80.3. Jaylen Brown was fourth when Anthony Simons was on the team. He was behind Derrick White, Peyton Pritchard, and Anthony Simons. That's kind of changed slightly now. He's up to 69.3 touches, second in the league. Sorry, second on the team, not second in the league. That would be ridiculous. So he is being asked to do a little bit more playmaking since Anthony left the team, since he was traded away, which kind of correlates to the more touches you're getting, the more playmaking you're asked to do, the more your turnovers are going to go up. That's just a fact of life, especially when you're not a natural born creator for others anyway. I do think that Pritchard being just 1 point behind him tells you a lot. Like, Brown isn't being asked to be a primary playmaker. He's being asked to be a secondary guy. And realistically, he's neck and neck as a secondary guy with Pritchard. Brown is still by far and away the team's number one outlet scorer. Like, I call him a release valve, right? You release the pressure by passing to Jaylen and letting Jaylen score. The Celtics have built this offense around Jaylen scoring, not around Jaylen creating. So having extra ball handlers in there that can do the creating for Jaylen as much as possible, feed him so he can attack off the rip through, feed him on the stampede cut, feed him on a post up, feed him on a flex action, feed him on a floppy. I don't care how you feed him, just feed him. And that's kind of been the mentality there. And it's worked really well. So I do agree with you. Like, as the turnovers have gone up, it's kind of because there was a bit of a ball handling void left by Anthony Simons. You don't want to give too many extra touches to Baylor and not give some to Jaylen, because Jaylen's the MVP candidate. He should have the ball in his hands more than a sophomore, late first round pick should. So that's kind of been how it's going. But I do agree. I think Baylor kind of gives you a bit more balance. And even with Tatum coming back off injury, you're still going to need that balance, because Tatum's not going to be anywhere near his best for at least a month, maybe more.
That's where I really kind of want to see Baylor just keep that spot, because I think it's just so much more fun to get this guy, especially playoff reps. It's going to be so good for his development and confidence, because he's something special.
I think that's everything I've got to say today.
Think you did a good job.
I think so. Sometimes I talk too much. I know I talk too much. I need to talk slower. That's what I need to do. Right, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in, showing some love. Make sure you're showing Billy some love over on socials. Billy, where can they find you?
CBO041, Letterbox. Let's also hit up the X and Facebook groups, all of it, guys. Come see me.
All right, yeah, and everyone knows where to find me. Make sure you subscribe into the newsletter and the YouTube channel. We'll catch you soon. Everybody have a fantastic Tuesday. Deuce.